Shot clock at 4. Hart fakes. Hart tries another three-pointer. Oh, it's good! Knocks down another!
This man deserves a statue in front of the Garden. It's not a stretch to say that the Knicks have had an extremely tumultuous 2023-24 season. From a major shakeup at the trade deadline that saw 3 pieces that were supposed to be our future depart, to catastrophic injuries, to just about our entire lineup, chaos was always surrounding New York this season. And yet, we found a way to overcome. And not overcome in a small sense of struggling to the 10th seed and then making the play-in and battling to a first-round exit. No, we thrived in the midst of all the turmoil. We dominated our way through the end of the season and fought our way not just outside of the play-in, but all the way up to the 2nd seed and through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. This is the highest that the Knicks have finished since the 2012-13 season, and we did it hobbled and without having a lot of key pieces. And while Jalen Brunson rightfully deserves a lot of the praise, Josh Hart is undoubtedly one of the main reasons for this. To pause for a bit, when I say the word role player legend, who do you think of? If you're older, your mind may go back to a guy like Robert Horry, who was always liable to hit a big shot and helped out as a team defender with his size. Or perhaps you're a more recent fan and think of a guard who won't necessarily show up in the box score, but he undoubtedly has a positive impact on your squad when he's out there, like TJ McConnell or Monte Morris. Maybe you're a Nets fan and your mind goes back to Theo Pinson, who created great bench energy and vibes, or the greatest crash out there ever was in Quincy AC. Regardless of who you think of, Josh Hart has all the qualities of a great role player. From being a great positional rebounder and disruptor on defense to being an absolute ball hawk who's willing to do the dirty work to secure loose basketballs. And he has an acute awareness of what his role is on the team, and he's willing to do whatever is necessary to win the game. This can mean any number of things, from diving in the crowd for a loose ball to crashing the offensive glass hard every time, even with the size disadvantage, and even shooting a double clutch pull-up 3 in the playoffs to seal the game. This is all because Hart just has that dog in him. And having a player who's willing to do all of the dirty work is foundational to making sure your team can contend. And when the games matter most, despite how much we would like to believe that it comes down to superstars, the fact is that role players usually win you games. And watching Hart made me think, what are some of the most underrated and forgotten role player performances in the playoffs? So I decided to make a list. And with that being said, I present to you 3 of the best and most forgotten role player playoff performances. Player 1. 2021 Derrick Rose. Since this video started out with giving props to Josh Hart, it's only right that we revisit another Knick on this list. For context, in 2021 it was a bit, say, odd being a Knicks fan. It's the first season following the NBA bubble, and nobody really has high expectations for us. In fact, ESPN had us finishing 13th in the East. Yet, we somehow ended up finishing 4th. And this was due in large part to Julius Randle's unexpected ascension. He went from averaging 19.5 points per game to averaging 24 and 10 and making his first All-Star team, which also led to him winning the Most Improved Player award. Going into the playoffs, while a lot of people suspected Julius Randle's good play to be fake, the Knicks were still expecting him to be a playoff riser and lead our offensive unit against Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks. And I cannot express to you how wrong everybody was. Words cannot describe how poorly he played, so maybe some stats and some clips can. He averaged 18 points on 29.8% shooting from the field, on 18.8 field goal attempts per game, and 33% from 3, with 4.6 turnovers a game. Randle was absolutely atrocious, and our entire team was just painful to watch this series. Well, except for one guy. See, Derrick Rose has always had a special place in the heart of NBA fans, and for Knicks fans, this was his second stint with the team, and the Garden had always embraced him. He was averaging 14.7 points this season on 25 minutes as a backup to he who shall not be named. So coming into the playoffs, we didn't really expect much. But Rose not only overachieved for himself, he overachieved for the entire team. And despite us losing in 5 games, D Rose was able to turn back the clock for this series and raise his averages to 19.4 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds on 47% shooting from the field and 47% shooting from 3. Rose's play ultimately didn't win us the series, but he did play good enough to help lead us to a Game 2 win where he had 26 points and helped create arguably the most iconic memes in New York history. And while Rose has since left the Knicks to join the Grizzlies, his time with New York has solidified him as a role player legend and left every New Yorker with a special place for D Rose. Moment number 2, the Olynyk Clinic. For many people, mainly Celtics fans, Kelly Olynyk is the picture of a role player. For me, as someone who's not a fan of the Celtics, he seems like the picture-perfect Boston player. A big, slow, floor-stretching center who has some questionably dirty plays on the court. Literally everything I picture when I think of a Boston player. And in 2016-17, he was the model of a Boston Celtic role player, averaging 9 points and 4.8 rebounds while playing behind Al Horford. And he was a part of a team that was being led by Isaiah Thomas, who many people believe to have a case for MVP after averaging 29-5 and making his second All-Star team. The Celtics finished first in the East, going 53-29, and after beating the Bulls in the first round, they were primed for a matchup with the 4th-seeded Wizards, led by John Wall. And this series was an all-out war. Coming into Game 7 of the series, Wall and Thomas had been having an all-time point guard duel, which included John Wall dropping 40 on an Isaiah Thomas who had 53 in an overtime victory in Game 2. But Thomas's scoring output had slowly begun to regress as the series continued. But when Game 7 arrived, that duel did not take center stage. While IT did finish with 29 points and John Wall ended with 18 points and 11 rebounds, the real star for the Wizards was Bradley Beal, who ended with 38 points. But despite Bradley Beal's hot shooting and IT's offensive duel with him, none of these factors were the story of the game, or what decided the outcome of this series. The story was Kelly Olynyk, whose fourth quarter heroics helped Boston seal the game and the series against the Wizards. Olynyk was having a relatively decent game entering the fourth quarter with 12 points, but after making 2 free throws to give him 14, Olynyk went on to make 3 straight jumpers on assists from IT. And he sent the Boston Garden into an absolute frenzy with this 3 off of a pick and pop with IT that effectively ended the game. And while the Celtics team did go on to lose to the Cavs in the conference finals, the memory of this performance has lived on with Celtics fans who have affectionately named it the Olynyk Clinic, or the Clinic with the K for short. This leads us, of course, into our final performance, Game 7 Dort. When I think of a role player, I'll admit that Lou Dort wouldn't be the first guy I think of, but he'd definitely be one of the first guys I think of. And this wasn't always meant to be the case for Lou Dort. Coming out of Arizona State in 2019, he was undrafted, and he ended up spending a lot of time in the G League honing his skills. But by the time the 2019-20 season rolled around, he was able to find a consistent spot on the Thunder. And not only was he able to find a spot on the team, but he was also receiving rotational minutes based on his stellar defense, which he honed during his time in the G League and which was able to boost him into the NBA. However, despite being a stellar defender in his playoff debut, Dort was given the nearly impossible task of guarding a James Harden who was at the tail end of his prime. But something magical happened during this series. Dort kinda did his job well. He guarded James Harden during this series pretty effectively and was even able to force a 5 for 16 shooting performance out of him. And while Harden did average 29 for the series, as a primary defender on Harden, Dort was as effective as anybody could really ask for. But unfortunately, for all his effectiveness on the defensive end, Lou Dort gave you little to nothing on offense. During his rookie season, Dort averaged 6.8 points per game, shooting 39.4% from the field and an abysmal 29.7% from the three-point line. But in the playoffs, Dort's offense took a huge jump relative to what he was averaging, and he boosted his point output to average 12.5 points per game, and while his three-point percentage stayed in the trash at 26%, he was able to provide some sort of threat for an OKC team that was desperately in need of offense to compete with Houston. This all set OKC up for a Game 6 matchup for the Rockets, and nobody could have predicted how this game would go. Lou Dort went out there and got 30. And not only did he score 30 points, he did so with 6 threes and proved himself, at least for this game, to be a viable threat to the Rockets from beyond the arc. And he did all of this while putting on his best defensive performance of the series, guarding James Harden and helping to hold him to 17 points on 4 for 15 shooting and 1 for 9 from 3. I'm not exaggerating when I say that this may very well be in the running for the greatest and most unexpected role player playoff performance of all time. Well, I guess it would have been if not for other, more unfortunate circumstances. But this performance was still legendary and helped cement Dort as a piece that certainly had a place in OKC's future. And now, with the Thunder as a 1 seed and leading the youth movement in the league, Dort is an indispensable part of that young OKC core. And with this performance out of the way, we've arrived at the end of the video. While all of these performances are often overlooked, they can all serve as examples of how talented the league is and the importance of building great teams and not just having individual players. So to circle back to the beginning of the video, God bless Josh Hart and every role player out there who doesn't get the praise that they deserve. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment, I guess. Until next time.